and salvage back when. Um, But, you know,
In speaking with one of the DPW workers at the onset of the pandemic, he did go through all of the buildings and grab all of the hand sanitizer that he could find for the DPW folks. So that's went to good use.
Um, So the school kind of picked it clean, everything they need, right? DPW.
Is your mic on?
Oh, now we're on. So the school went through and picked it clean when they left, right? Everything that they thought was of value. DPW grabbed a few things, but the rest of the town departments, I don't think have had that opportunity. And, you know, I understand that going and selling all of this stuff is a process that requires inventorying, and it's a whole thing, and likely, you know, there's not a ton of stuff that's worth sellable value in there. But, you know, I do wonder if there are entities in the town that would want things from there. I know that one of the teachers at the elementary school has expressed like taking the banners down from the gym. I know there are musical instruments in there that I don't know if, you know, somebody would want. There are books in the library, which, you know, I don't know what condition they're in, but there are dozens of boxes. So I just wonder if part of the recommendation should be, you know, giving various town departments or entities the opportunity to go through and grab anything that they need or want.
I honestly think we're putting anybody in harm's way to go through those buildings and pick through, because you don't know what you're picking through, what mold is there, what asbestos is there. I think the best thing to do is have a big truck come in, pick it up, and dump it. I really think, I don't think there's anything, the only thing I saw that was, that I could see value were a lot of shelving units, which I saw and said, ooh, they'd be great for a food pantry. But you know what? The time it would take to clean them, abate them, et cetera, they might as well get new ones. I think the best thing to do there is go in, pull it out, and throw it out.
yeah, that's a noble idea, Chris. But I wonder about the liability that the town would incur.
Well, I mean, I agree, I wholeheartedly, I said it initially, but one thing, just for the back of your mind, if there are these banners that are hung from the ceilings, what could be done if we pay attention to the process is during the demolition, if we meet with the contractor prior to the demolition, he would have the ability to go in there with an aerial lift and cut down the banners. So I don't think, if that is a valid idea that has merit, that can be done without any great liability, because we would have, and they would do it, it's not, I imagine they're just strung from the rafters. And if that is of value to the school and they think that it has worth, then I think that could be done on a limited basis.
Yeah, so rather than making that an explicit part of the recommendation, it can be an sort of implied process that, you know, prior to the demolition, we're just, you know, making sure that if there's anything in there, it's coming out before the buildings are going down. Okay.
So the RFP, we've already established that that's something that is going to move forward through this body?
The RFP, we had originally recommended a couple months ago for the testing. So they're going to vote on that Monday night, this coming Monday night. And it's my understanding from speaking with them this past Monday night that they all understood that it needs to happen regardless of what we're doing with those buildings.
But the design RFP is
The
going to be one of our recommendations.
The design, it's going to be an RFQ, not an RFP. So that's kind of our, that's moving on to our next steps. So is there any other further discussion that we want to touch base on with the existing buildings?
I just want to say one thing, just thinking back to discussing this, all the stuff that's there, we potentially are going to need maybe an RFP for somebody to come in to clean it out. There's really that much stuff. There's boxes and boxes of books. There's desks, there's tons of stuff. And I don't know that any contractor wants to clean anything out before they do. I mean, we're going to have dump trucks and like rollaways come in.
Oh, they would do that.
Yeah.
They're
we-
gonna walk through and see everything that's
Just
there.
throw it all in a big truck.
They don't care.
It'll be thrown out.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah, get the bulldozer in, scoop it up, and whatever's left in there can just be off it goes. And if the contractors saw value in it and they want to scrap it, it's their responsibility to separate it out.
Oh, one thing I had here, I didn't know where you wanted to classify this, but I thought it would be good if we suggest that the council prioritize the assignment of land area for community garden for the spring of '22. Whether we classify that under this subtitle or another. I just thought it might be smart for us to go out of our way to prioritize that we can be of assistance to them if they want us to look at the topography map and say, okay, gardening committee, this is where you can go and stay out of the active work zones. Are you okay? Because at least that's the one positive that we've all shared that is going, and we should continue it.
Absolutely. I think Ann Lily's the chairman of that committee.
Yeah, she is.
And I don't know what the process is, but we can, I mean, that's just a conversation, right?
Right.
I mean, I'll reach out to her and ask her.
Right.
I mean, because it's, everything's gonna be bulldozed in that whole area. I mean, it's not viable.
Right.
That we might need to get her input once it makes its way into the process and we have a schedule of if it does happen, when it will happen, and then she can adjust accordingly. I'm sure they're going to need water, so given where a water source would be and what work would go on, the time of year that it would go on, maybe it would go on before their growing season, after her growing season, so probably give her a heads up, but I'm not sure she could really pinpoint right now because we don't know if it's even going forward.
Right. And I think even if the Parks and Rec Committee has an idea of size, I know they had quite a number of volunteers helping out this past year. They felt that in speaking with Ann and Cheryl, they felt that area between the Building 10 and the administration building was a pretty good sizable area. So it might be worth the discussion, just seeing what are your plans, given the success of this past year, what are your plans moving forward? Are you going to start to think of it being still a bigger community garden? Are you thinking that there's going to be individualized plots? Because I think there's a lot of options that they've been looking at, but I haven't talked with them, but we could probably easily just have a touch base with them too.
So we're getting really specific about the community garden, which is great because I hope it does well. But I think that we could probably wrap this up in a more general recommendation around the Halliwell Review Committee's expanded charter. Maybe we can talk about that later, right? In that giving us perhaps the ability to, authorize those things without having to go through a process to the town council, so that those interim uses while demolition's going on, while we're waiting for the next phase of the project, like the community garden, if something else comes along, just figuring out what that process looks like for, people using the site, basically.
Okay. So I would like to just get back to just what our final recommendation is going to be with the existing buildings. So far, what I think we've come to the conclusion is obviously we're going to be recommending abatement and demolition within a certain time frame. I think the way that this could probably play out is that we could give, if awarded their contract, ECM could probably take the month of January to do their scope of work that's been outlined in their proposal. And then we say within those 3 months after, so February, March, April, that's when the town needs to put together an RFP for abatement and demolition and go out to bid for that, to get that taken care of. So then by May, there can be a contractor ready to go.
I mean, we could just use the word expeditiously, and let them fill in the blank.
Sure.
Our point was to give it a sense of urgency, but I think your timing would work.
Do we have any idea what that expectation would be for a cost on what that would come in at?
I did hear one of the council members estimate that it's probably going to be about $40,000 a building, but we would certainly know more once ECM puts together their abatement and demolition costs. So then that way we'll have a realistic expectation of what the current market is value for abatement and demolition is going to go for.
Well, we kept hearing 400 odd.
Right.
As what was in the kitty from Remainder, and
Right.
I mean, I don't see how the total for demolition and abatement would exceed that number by any
Yeah.
stretch. I mean,
I would certainly hope not.
yeah, I mean, I just, so in my mind, I have a certainty that, quote unquote, we can afford to do it with what we have. Which is good, because that means there won't be a delay searching for money.
Okay. So I guess I will make a motion that our first recommendation to town council for the existing buildings is to abate and demolish all 11 buildings expeditiously as they move forward.
Second.
Okay, we have a second from Mr. Mayo. Do I need to do a roll call for these things?
I think for this type of thing, I don't think you need a roll call.
Okay.
I mean, if you want, what you can do, if you, at the end, we can do
Yeah.
a roll call for everything if you want.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think we're all of consensus mind here.
All right, so, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. All right, so that's it for our existing buildings. The next topic that I would like to focus on for a little bit is the new use for the property. And this is certainly going to play out from the recommendations from the Weston and Sampson report. A lot of what we heard from our surveys and our charrettes and our various meetings and Pumpkin Fest and all of our consensus building that we've been doing over the past 9 months. And I'll just start off first is that, you know, we've really been hearing a lot about a community center and a senior center, and there's a lot of additional programming that was outlined in the Weston and Sampson report. So I think that's really the general gist of my thinking, so I wanted to put that out to the board and see what else what everybody else was thinking.
One thing I wanted to add, though, is to make a specific, I wrote it this way, encourage the town council to authorize this committee to conduct further meetings with the YMCA to determine viability of a joint venture.
You're jumping ahead a couple.
Oh, okay, I didn't know what order. I figured that was part of the new, I didn't know.
That was going to be, when I say new use, I'm thinking of, you know, what activities we want to be down there. You know, a couple of people spoke out about having splash pads. There were people that want to have a large multifunction space that's specifically dedicated for seniors. There's other classroom space that people want to be able to go and teach arts and crafts in. There's the food pantry. There's, you know, a satellite office for the police and fire department. A lot of different things that came out of a lot of various discussions. So in recommending our new use as more of a broad topic, we would be saying that in the next steps is that we would further explore the viability and the programming of these buildings and the site. So I know there was another part where someone said that they'd like to see a lot of walking trails or a cross-country trail that could be around the site, and that could be part of what we're exploring in our next steps. So it's kind of I'm kind of dipping my toe in two different pools right now with our new use and then our next steps, but they kind of are going hand in hand a little bit.
Well,
Could I
go ahead.
Could I suggest that you make it as general as you just did, and that'll cover it? We will evaluate all considerations given to us by the community for further use of this facility and investigate it and try to work out a plan. but I don't think I'd make it specific at all. I wouldn't say a splash pool, I wouldn't say a Y in that general thing. I would just say we will investigate all potential uses for the property.
Yeah, I
We're
agree.
way too early to have a specific plan.
Right.
Yep, broad-based.
Yeah.
I think Weston Sampson have given us a lot to think about in a potential roadmap, but at this point in time, it's still wide open. And more community involvement, more discussion, broad-based community asset, right, is what we'd like to see created there.
But I thought it might be helpful if we indicate that whatever term, however we want to word it, but it seems clear to all that a community multi-use structure is a priority if the site allows. And then that allows us to open any door we want to sub-interpret from that, elderly, youth, all of the above. Yeah, so it's a multi-use, community-based center, which also still gives us the ability, and I was a big advocate of it, for the satellite police and the satellite fire, if it will fit. One thing I did right here when I was trying to, priority that seemed to me is, which we could say to the council, to determine what is the largest footprint of building that makes any sense, with a minimum 2 stories, because we know that the land is precious. We know that relief height could be granted with a variance. And this will clarify how functional the land can be for the preferred use. I mean, if we find that, yeah, we can get a 10,000 square foot footprint times 2, 20,000 square feet easily, then that becomes a very attackable situation where we can. Right. But if we find that between site development, infrastructure, that through this RFP and Q eventually, when that the design is really, we're barely going to get a 5,000 square foot footprint and then 10 total, we want to know that, because that's the foundation of what we're trying to do. I also thought that, with that being said, I don't think we can be afraid. Councilor Alves made note of it, but I don't think we can be afraid to consider the possibility that limited development with a focus on outdoor activities, including the trails, the concert, the playgrounds, and the food truck, and an outdoor rink for winter activities with small accessory buildings, we may find, or we should at least keep our minds open to the idea that you can't force the building in there because it's too big. But we have this asset, and we could use it for exclusively outdoor stuff with 1 or 2 accessory little buildings to supplement. I just thought it was worthwhile to keep it. We don't have to force it especially if we find that there is other land that we own that would present itself for that multi-use structure. I don't know. It was just something I had in my mind.
So, to sort of,
He did have a very good point about bringing up the fact that we potentially might have to use that for additional school space. With the other. With the old Tupperware building, that's slated to become a housing development. I mean, that's 150 units. Where are we gonna put those? I mean, we potentially might just have to save it and use it later on for something additional.
Well,
Not that we want another school there, but because of the same issues, but I mean, we don't know yet.
I remember that I reflected on the same thing, and I wrote down, I said, one of the things that we can have the design team do is spend a little bit of time and say, okay, if you did want to build a school there, this is the largest school that we could build there, given the constraints. And at least the town could say, well, yeah, if they expect that that's going to be an issue, then yeah, this is how big it can be. And if it's not big enough, then at least we knew we did our but I had thought of that too, based on what.
So along those lines, I think it would really make sense for us to have, and I know the planning department has it, I've seen it, a map and an inventory of all the town land.
Yeah.
So we can look at that and kind of discuss what other options might be out there. I mean, let's face it, there's not a lot, but it'd be good to know what might have potential beyond this site.
Yeah, because we heard, I mean, the Scouters Hall idea, you can't rule it out. I mean, the
Yeah.
land is sitting right there. I mean, you know, it is a viable consideration by any stretch, you know.
Actually, that site at Pacheco was much larger than we're using, too. There's a lot of other land over there. Absolutely, it goes way back. Yep.
To wrap this up as a recommendation that I think covers a lot of what was said and creates a lot of leeway to explore these different things. Continue investigating and evaluating potential community uses of the property with additional public outreach and involvement. That covers, evaluating for school uses, all the outdoor stuff, community centers, senior centers. It's very general, just sort of continues to push that exploration and drive some of the fact that nothing is decided yet, right?
Well, in our defense, isn't it true that that's why we need the next level of professional engagement? We don't have the information to say definitively that we can or can't do this. All we can say is we're still pushing forth the passions that we were given, which is a broad-based thing.
Right.
And I believe that with the school issue, in the RFQ that we originally put out back in October, or reviewed back in October, we did include options. We had put in, or I had put in, let's see, where is it? Hold on a minute, I know I wrote it somewhere. Maybe I need to update it. Sorry, here we go. Cost estimates for 2 options with escalation and phasing if applicable. So what probably should be better said in this RFQ that we had reviewed is that we are while we go through this master planning exercise, that we should look at an option with a community-based building and reserving land for a potential school use or other town-wide use, to whatever it may be, to be determined later on down the road, that at least we carve out that space and say, this space is going to be reserved for whatever the future may hold for us. And then that way we're not maximizing a building footprint that might not work for us in the future.
How does that play out, though?
Well, we would essentially come to terms with a master plan that has everything incorporated into it. And then we can say, this field over here, this 10,000 square foot footprint that's going to be acting as, additional baseball fields, additional tennis courts, or what have you, is going to essentially remain untouched, undeveloped, so that if the town needs to develop further for whether it be school or municipal use, that land is already now reserved for whatever may come down the road. And then that way we're not we don't pigeonhole the next generation or two saying, oh, we got to find some land and buy land for people and buy land from people because we need a new school and, where
You're
it can.
saying it's part of the master.
Right, right.
Well, I think the other, maybe we need to qualify, if we want the RFQ and the RFP, if we found that there's other town land, is that considered a separate issue? Or do we exhaust the Halliwell site, since that's what we were charged to do, or do we ask them for the leverage to look at other land that we own and have the architectural firm say, you know, yeah, we could, no, we couldn't, you know?
It might be worth just starting with figuring out what town land we do own, how accessible it is, kind of go through and make that checklist of, what's the means of egress going to and from the site? Does it kind of check off some of the things that we're concerned about already? And then we could potentially make the recommendation or suggestion to town council that, you know, the Halliwell property may not be best suited for what we're looking to do, and this parcel over here may be a better use.
So should we state that in this document? Or how did you want to?
Well, I think in the original charter for this group, one of the points was review the public facility needs of the town, right? Which I think covers a lot of that. It's sort of general. It's not just looking at the Halliwell property. It's looking at the town as a whole and determining, you know, does something fit better over here or potentially over there. So I think maybe we want to keep that going forward with the expectation that it includes that sort of charge.
Yeah, it's more of a higher level, but we're focusing our efforts for the Halliwell property, but we're still at a higher level looking at other properties.
I think the scope of anything that's done would be remiss if it didn't look at the town as a whole and look at all the potential, all the opportunities. One thing I don't know, what the requirements are for any town-owned property that's been purchased with open space funds. And if those funds, the purchase of that property prohibits any development. So we'd also have to make sure that what we're looking at is kind of
Feasible.
clearly marked.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's quite a bit. I think a lot of people would be surprised at just how much land the town does own. I often hear there's not much. Well, there really is. And I think that should be part of what we're looking at going forward.
And I think while our scope may not allow us to say how those other parcels can be used, it does play in knowing what we have available will inform our decision of maybe do we incorporate land for a school, or do we say, well, there are other parcels. In our recommendation, there are other parcels available for a school, so in our view, we think Halliwell would be best served in this function. Or the lack of available land suitable to build a school would inform our decision to hold land for a school as well as develop for community needs. So, yeah, I mean, while we can't say ultimately what that land would be used for, I think looking into it is within our scope and helps us make decisions.
How about if we just added at the end of whatever we say about Halliwell and see how it fits into the, and we will always be cognizant of how it fits into the town's master plan. That way we cover everything. In other words, we're saying we're going to go forward with ideas for Halliwell, and we're going to also keep in mind how it fits into the town's master plan. Because, yeah, we're going to need schools, but are we going to need schools in 5 years, 15 years, or 30 years? So we just say how it fits into the town's master plan.
Well, because, you know, it just dawned on me, because I had written a note here, and that is, you know, the existing land, we have that gradual grade that goes up to the rear classrooms. Then we have that two-story structure that's cut into the hill. And then we have the building 10 and 11. Scheme 5 kind of showed the structure, if you will, in the lower right-hand corner if you were looking at a picture of the plot on the video screen. But then that kind of ties our hands to that, unless that, through some means of a road, became the access for either playing fields, we'd have to continue a road up there. But we've got a significant grade change that we would either have to step it through some extensive site work, or just have an upper and a lower area that is, but we need access for vehicles and handicap and everything else. So in my mind, I was trying to think the two-story structure is a no-brainer. We have to do it. But where do we situate it? Do we situate it in the back corner? I may be getting off track, but it's those things that, because if you put it in the back corner, that the whole front of the property now becomes viable. So it's going to be an interesting challenge for a designer to look at it and say, this is the best use of what we're trying to do, because it is it's an odd shape. Maybe that explains why they built it the way they did. I don't know. I wonder. I do.
No, I am certainly interested to see what some of my architectural colleagues may be coming up with for this site. So Chris, it sounded like you were in the process of making a motion, so do you want to?
He was writing something, yeah.
I'm trying to wrap all this up. Okay, so I would make a motion to recommend that the town continue investigating and evaluating potential community uses of the property within the context of the town's master plan and existing and upcoming public facility needs, with additional public outreach and involvement.
I'll second that. And you wrote that down, right? So you can send that to me when I'm making these meeting minutes? Perfect. All right. We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor? Aye. Great.
Now, does that tie into, are we making multiple motions, or are we incorporating all of it into one motion?
We're going to, there's 4 topics that I want to touch on tonight. The existing buildings, which we did, the new use, which we just did, our next steps, and the next one would be our resolution revisions or / goals. So that was kind of how I wanted to format the discussion this evening. Excuse me. So really, what the topic that I would have on would be the next steps for the Halliwell Review Committee. So obviously, we've discussed putting out an RFQ for architectural and engineering services for master planning and conceptual design. And then I've also been hearing that we should be exploring potential partnerships with other community-based organizations such as the YMCA. So we have those 2 as some of our next steps. Weston and Sampson did provide the 6-page memo of what their recommendations were. They have the securing the site, but I think if we're going to be demolishing those within the next 4 to 5 months, it's just be throwing money away. We're going into winter months. People are going to be staying inside a little bit more. So and the police have a fairly good presence down there already as it stands. The next step was the solicitation for consulting architect and engineering team. They've outlined a fairly extensive and informative process that I would certainly echo. But I would also include I would kind of lump, items 3 and 4, programming and alternatives for schematic and design and cost estimates, all together as one. Those 2 steps together. And then in the RFQ, we do write that the town has the option to continue the contract with the selected firm, whoever they may be, to move forward into design development, construction documents, bidding, and construction administration. So I would, there might be a few items that we just revise in that request for qualifications based on what we've now learned. Some of the items that Weston and Sampson outlined, I think there were a few things that I did miss when I was writing this, so it would certainly be good to incorporate. But certainly, if it were the committee's desire, I could certainly start to, we could make the recommendation to go to put the RFQ together, and I would certainly offer up to work with the solicitor and the finance director to make sure that the RFQ is up to snuff, and go from there too.
But for our next step, are we not saying to the council that we are willing, or we would like the opportunity to follow through on the RFQ, review the applicants, and then make a suggestion to the council? That's where we're going, I assume?
Yeah, that would be, as we revise our resolution, I would include that, you know, the Halliwell Review Committee has oversight of the RFQ once it is executed, and we also interview the architectural and engineering firms so we can make a recommendation to town council on which one to go forward with.
We would need to make a recommendation to the town council to go out to an RFQ.
Yep.
Because they would then take it, or the solicitor, the administration would
Right.
then, with the town council's permission, then take that over. But through the resolution, we can kind of name our role on how we want to go
Right.
forward.
So right now, as we're talking, and I apologize if I'm kind of confusing things a little bit, because I think a lot of these next steps and then our future goals kind of go hand in hand, but I'm trying to logically list them out. So if my logic doesn't make sense, just say so.
I just want to make sure that we don't overstep our boundaries, and we follow. It's known that we are following procedure, and we are not trying to overstep any boundaries, usurp any kind of authority from anybody. That I think we're all on the same page of what we want to do. We all want to continue, as long as we are also on the same page of how we can go about doing that. Because I think we're all eager to continue this and carry this through. So we kind of just need permission from the town council to them to do their legislative duty and the executive to do his duty, to give us the tools to do that, so to speak.
Well, we really don't have any administrative authority.
Right.
So when it comes to executing things, that falls on the administration.
Right. We can
But-
talk about RFQs all
Yeah.
day, but we don't have the ability to put them out. We can only recommend
That's right.
this is what you
No, but I
need
think
to
that's
do.
understood. All
and-
we're saying is we should get the RFQ out, and then I think what we're saying is we are willing, or we're asking you, counselors, to give us the authority to conduct the interviews. And maybe they're going to come back to us and say, well, you know what, we'd like you to give us a short list of 2. We don't want your committee to just decide that we either say yay or nay. Maybe we want you to give us 2, and then we'll do whatever they say. But I think if we're going to do this, we might as well also add to this amended resolution the idea that, yeah, just like we did with Weston and Sampson, once you, town council, select architect A, we would like to then immediately transition into coordinating their design work, because
Yeah.
that is the next step. We have nowhere to go until that next step is started.
And I've been looking to the Municipal Building Review Task Force, because I feel that that's what we're evolving into, is they currently have oversight of the design of the police station, whether it be the renovation or the new building. That's kind of where they're at now. And they're going through their process now of, you know, they'll have their community outreach meetings to, you know, educate the public about the building. There's some revisions going on based on the public hearing that they've had. But I kind of see our role now as the Halliwell Review Committee as we're starting to evolve into a similar building entity as we move forward, similar to the MBRTF.
I think ultimately, essentially, we can't overstep our bounds, right? Because we have no final decision-making powers. We can't hire anybody. We can't sign a contract. But what I get out of that meeting Monday night was, I think they're relying upon us to do a lot of this legwork. I think they recognize that what the processes we're going through, They're not set up to do that. They're there to give the approval and sign the documents and sign the checks. But beyond that, I think what I got out of it was, they need us to do this legwork, the dirty work, and get them to the point where, you know what, this is where I think we should go, this is where we think we should go. Okay, you know what, let's get it done. And I think if we can put them on that path, we can get there. Go ahead. I think that's where we've gotten it so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw Monday that the council has different ideas of what they want to do with that property, or maybe to service certain needs in the town or future needs in the town. So you're right, I think us going through this process will help inform them that either that how we can best use that property to serve all the needs, as many needs as possible of the town, and maybe knock some of them off and help them decide this is not the right place for it, there's another place for it, and point them in that direction. But yeah, they have a lot going on, and I think we can definitely assist them in that.
But I think the follow-up point to both is that if we do what we're suggesting, all we're really doing is continuing, meaning the town's attitude was to create this committee to oversee a professional who would then give a professional opinion. And we did that. It wasn't our opinion, it was our opinion based on the professional input.
Yeah.
So it was not subjective. Nobody could look at what we did and say you were arbitrary and subjective. Everybody has to make an opinion at some point, but we relied on, so now, in my mind, we're going to the next stage, which is, okay, Weston and Sampson told us what we have, and they said, well, you could do this, and now we've decided, level the site, Mr. Architect number A, what can you create with what we have? And this is our wish list, and that person, that entity is going to say, I can give you this, I can give you that, I can't give you both, and then it's going to again be based on a professional's opinion and input, and we're going to facilitate it back up to the council and say, we've deliberated, and here are your options. What do you think? And yeah, we're putting it on the platter because they are leaders. They're not administrators, and we're pseudo-administrating by being able to expedite this stuff.
And that's precisely why you have planning boards, you have zoning boards, you have all the other entities in town, right? To just get that through the process and shoot it upstairs and let them determine where it's going.
I mean, that's why I think this is the perfect natural path for this committee, assuming everybody wants to move forward, and it would seem that we're all of kind of unanimous consent that we did.
I'm enjoying everybody's company in this process, so yes, I think we should continue on this path.
So, just to sort of put this in context, so we have kind of two different things we're talking about. The first is making a recommendation that they move forward with an RFQ for architectural design. Is that right?
Their services, yeah.
And then, what's that? Architectural services?
Yeah, let's do services.
Yeah, because it's also sort of planning services as
Yeah,
well.
because you're going to have, I would write architectural and engineering
Yeah, 'cause
services.
you've got civil work to do.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of civil work.
Okay. And then the other thing that we're talking about is the sort of continued role of the HRC. If we look back at the original charter, this was sort of spoken about in two different responsibilities. The first was review information provided by consultants retained by the town council. And then the second one was make recommendations to the town council on the potential future uses of the Halliwell property and buildings for its consideration. So if we want to kind of continue in that vein, we might take similar language and sort of update it for the type of work that's going to be coming, right? So what I'm saying is I don't know that we need to sort of wrap the Halliwell Review Committee, role in with the recommendation about an RFQ process.
Right.
Okay.
Because I was going to say that we could look at the resolution that's been passed already and provide some revisions to it. Because one of the things, you know, that I'm looking, that review information provided by consultants retained by the town council, we're also going to be guiding them at this point now. You know, we're going to be working with them to gather more information and input from the town, but I think we're also going to need to give them guidance. So then that way, because when I'm working with a client, you know, do you like scheme A or B? You know, every time that they come back with some design revision, I don't think it's going to be appropriate for us to run over to town council and be like, okay, do you like A or B? Because obviously, they're just going to be like, well, what have you guys heard? And ask us that question. So I think really we could review information provided by and also guide said consultants, but that would be a separate recommendation that we'd be making tonight.
And do we, so just to get back to the demolition, we're just gonna let that go once the contract is let, the administration of that work is a side issue, has nothing to do with this committee?
Yeah, we'll let the I would say we hand it to the council, say, administer it the way you see fit, because I'm sure there's rules and regulations that we might not be aware of. There's roles that I don't want to step on people's toes that are working in town that might just know how to do these and administer this. So I would just say for that situation. So I think what we can do for the request for qualifications is we can make a motion that we recommend that the town council go out for a request for qualifications for an architectural and engineering firm to further study a master plan and conceptual designs of the property based on the information that we've already been given, and continue onwards. And I'll make that a motion.
Second.
So
I know we have a new town planner. Might be good to get him in on a meeting going forward as well.
Right.
So we're all on the same page. He knows where we're coming from, and vice versa. He can weigh in on what we're looking at.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have a motion for the RFQ and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Well, I guess a quick question as it relates to the RFQ. What is the RFQ going to say? Are we going to specifically suggest that the RFQ should mention that one of the priorities is a community multi-use structure, or how, because how will architect A, B, and C
Right.
understand it?
So at our October 7th meeting, we did recommend the RFQ already. I would say we might want to, if it's acceptable to the board, I could make some revisions to it based on what we've discussed tonight, and then still provide that to the town council, and then if the committee is accepting of it, I would certainly be happy to work with the town solicitor and the finance director and the administrator to get all the correct language right, the legalese part, but also ensure that we're getting what we want to get out of the architectural and design engineering firm, if that's acceptable to everybody.
We trust you, Jeff.
So, formality, I would ask that be a motion.
I formally move that Jeff be allowed to work on the RFQ and bounce it off appropriate persons, so it's appropriate for the town council meeting.
I'll second
Can we
that.
use the word bounced in a?
Bounce, you can bounce it off.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for that.
When are we gonna get the map of the land? Is there like a time limit on that? Because
When are we going to get what?
the map of the
Parcels.
that the town owns. I mean, that's
I
a
c-
big consideration if we.
I could put the bug in the planning department's ear tomorrow.
Okay.
I wouldn't hold them to the next week or two because of holiday vacations and everything, but I'm sure we could probably have it for our next meeting.
They have a 24 by 36 that we could lay out and
Carl's on the hunt.
yeah,
If
that's
Carl
pretty good
shows me,
stuff right
if
there.
Carl shows me how to do this, because I've been trying to do this for ages, and I cannot figure it out, so that's
It's pretty
why,
good.
that's why I asked the planning department to do,
Yeah.
request that information from them. But if Carl can show me how that works right now, that would be fantastic. Oh, of course,
It's very intuitive.
that makes sense.
But we should look at that map real soon.
We shall in a moment, I think.
Yeah. Do we need to have an official drum roll, Carl? You sweat? Okay, so while we're waiting for that to go, I do want to talk about the exploring potential partnerships. How do we want to approach that? I know there's been mentions of subcommittees, there's been mention of all of us meeting with folks, there's been individual meetings.
So my primary thought about this is we should definitely have some type of recommendation in there about it. I would not make it specific to the why. I would make it more general, exploring partnerships with, community organizations or something. I think it's important that we sort of retain the freedom to just see what's out there, And I would say that, the ability to
But-
form,
But that should be through us.
yeah, through us, and I think
Yeah.
that your suggestion of a subcommittee to do that might make sense. Having 9 people work on that might be a little bit much.
Okay. So if anybody wants a break from family over Christmas break,
Some of those could be houses we've taken over for tax reasons, so you could just have single families up there.
Take a virtual tour of town.
Yeah.
so what I'm hearing for our next motion is that where we recommend to the town council that the Halliwell Review Committee has the ability to form a subcommittee to further explore partnerships with community-based organizations. So I'll make that a motion.
Second.
I think the only qualifier there is that even though it's broad-based for a reason, there's only so many entities that want, and then the other reality is the further discussion other than just a base level, it would have to be put on hold until we achieve the base level of design to determine what is the maximum size structure, multi-use, because that's what we're talking about here. The multi-use structure is where that entity, be it the Y or another similar, would play in. So I agree, we should ask them for the authorization to conduct additional interviews, but of course, it means nothing until we have some idea as to what size structure we can build.
Right, and as I said at a previous meeting, I think that the design of our community-based building could go kind of concurrently. We have two paths of travel going at the same time, because they may have, whether it be the Y or another entity, they may have some insight and say, oh, you're looking to do X, Y, and Z. Well, we've done X, Y, and Z, and these are some things that we've learned that, might benefit what we're doing. So I think having those to go at the same time will probably be better more advantageous than trying to separate them out.
As a matter of procedure, do we need to have a resolution to get permission from the town council to form our own subcommittee? Could we argue that between A and F, that will help our review public needs of the town? So by partnering with by looking into partnerships or cooperation of other groups that could assist us in the public need and make recommendations by seeking that information through a subcommittee, that's how we can make that recommendation. Do we need the town council's permission, or do we need our charter here to be amended to allow us to
I would say,
make subcommittees?
yes. I would say
Okay.
we would want to make that request, and if they're guided by the solicitor saying that we don't need their authority to make a subcommittee, then we can go ahead and do that.
Okay.
But if we do need their authority, I would rather have them have the discussion and just tell us what we can and cannot do.
Okay.
And based on that, we could say, if we can't, it would be our recommendation that you add that to the resolution to give us that ability, so we can explore this potential partnership. And if we don't need it, then our noses are clean and we can continue moving forward.
Okay.
I think if you keep it in the general terms that you laid out, that's probably why. They all know we're talking for a while already, so they're gonna know probably what we're going with it.
Well, I think, just generally, it's things like the food pantry or scouts or like any organization that is not a town entity. Yeah, so I think we just want to retain that leeway,
Okay. All right, so we do have a motion and a second for the exploring the partnerships with community-based organizations. Subcommittee can be at the discretion of the at the direction of the town council and the solicitor. So I'll amend that motion to include the language that, let's see, how do I want to say this? I'm going to amend my motion to recommend exploring partnerships with the community-based organizations, and if so required, get with town council approval, create a subcommittee of the Halliwell Review Committee to explore that, to have that ability. So that's my amended motion. Did you get that?
Second.
Perfect. All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from multiple? All in favor?
All right.
Aye. All right. Are there any other, before we get into the revision, the potential revision of our resolution and our goals, is there any other next steps that we feel that we need to address in recommendations? Okay.
Did we want to make a general recommendation that the town keeps the property? Or is that sort of implied in the other
I think that's
recommendations?
implied based on all the other recommendations that we've been giving.
Okay.
If they were gonna sell it, I think they at least asked us if we thought that was a good idea.
Well, I mean, the question of selling, even if you wanted to entertain it, we've proven to ourselves that for a developer of any kind, you've got zoning issues and you've got very limited subdivision capabilities if that's what you're gonna do. You've got wetlands all over the place. So I don't even know that if it would be profitable to sell it. That's what my premise was. If we can't build something, we just turn it into as much of an outdoor activity thing as we can. But yeah, I don't think at this point that we even need to define that.
So as far as our resolution, we've already kind of identified the potential creation of a subcommittee. We would like to continue the oversight of the RFQ, which we should probably, I think as of right now, we should probably just make a recommendation that we would all like to stay on and continue working on this. I think we've all said it, but I think we can formalize it.
Yeah.
Say that the group is still dedicated to continuing the process to move forward. So if everyone felt that could be, should be a recommendation just before we get into the revised goals and resolution that we want to move forward with, would probably just kind of hit the nail on the head, make sure everybody understands that we're here for the long run, I think. And we're dedicated for the long, we're playing the long game. So, let's see. I will make a motion that we recommend to town council to continue the committee's charge as we outline. Maybe I'll save that. I'll stop for a minute.
Maybe we could say something like, recommend that the town keeps the existing Halliwell Review Committee and revises its charter to extend its role,
Perfect.
and then we can define what that is.
Yep.
Okay. So I'll make a motion that we recommend that the town keeps the existing Halliwell Review Committee and revises the committee's charter to extend its role.
Well, you may want to add the specifics to oversee the RFQ and the ensuing design contract. Because that's really what we're talking about, right? Our future is
So we could say,
working with that entity to further the design so that we can get closer and closer to something, reality that we could then make decisions on.
so how about if we did this? We can hold off on the motion just now, and we can sort of group all this together.
Exactly.
Make the recommendation that it extends its role with the following modifications.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that should work. And as Robert just said, the first on the list is the oversight of and execution of the RFQ and the design in the process with the architecture and engineering firm. One thing that I was thinking of that was mentioned on Monday was Weston and Sampson's recommendation to begin discussions with DEM about potential recreational uses around the wetlands area. So I was thinking, given our new town planner and assistant planner, that we work with them to start those discussions. So then that way, once we do have an architecture engineering firm on board, we're already having those, or Mark or Bobby are having those discussions with the EM of what's going to be allowed there. Because I would hate for a firm to come in and recommend that we do something, and then further down the line, we find out that it's not viable. So I understand that the wetland regulations are changing this year with the setbacks and the buffer zones and everything. So there could be changes to what can happen in those areas. So I would certainly encourage us to employ the help of the planning department to explore what those recreational uses could be.
Well, with that said, we have a highly competent professional in Burrillville who works for many, many clients that appear both in front of the zoning and the planning. He's worked for me. I'm wondering if we shouldn't entertain the idea of a RFQ to wetland delineation type firms who have that ability, so that it's a two-pronged approach. We could start to review things of that nature and not wait for the engineering architectural firm. Since we have an asset that the town is very familiar with. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, that's why I was saying we work with Mark and Bobby.
Get their opinion.
Get their, because they'll have plenty of contacts in DEM. They know who to talk to. I don't know who to talk to. And then that way, the DEM we start to let them know that we're going to be doing stuff down here. Our civil engineer is going to be coming to you with questions. This is what we'd like to do. can we do bike paths? Can we do, you know, gravel sidewalks, walking trails? Or do we have to, can we do a boardwalk? Could we build bridges over some of these intermittent streams? Get an idea of what we're allowed to be, or what will be allowed around these wetlands. So I think we can just utilize Mark and Bobby and
just go on that path.
and go on that path. Because then that will mean we're balancing a couple different contracts all at once, and then we have to bring in this contractor to talk with another contractor, where I always like to keep the architect and their umbrella of all their engineering consultants all kind of together, because then they're always talking together and they're getting all the same direction. And then the elephant in the room that we always tend to avoid is the budget and cost. Understanding that we're going to get cost estimates through the RFQ process, or through the architectural and engineering firm, it might be worth potentially having another subcommittee meet with the town administrator, the finance director, the budget committee, to start to see, is this feasible? What can we afford? What can we not afford? What's the budget that we can work within? Understanding, you know, how we can pay for these architectural services, that sort of thing. So I think that might be another option, another part that we've been meeting with. We've had, you know, all individual separate meetings with the various, you know, boards and committees. But I think that might be one of the ones where people will certainly be most interested in hearing about, because there's a lot of excitement about the project, but there's always going to be the question of money. And we're now starting to get to the point where, okay, let's start to get an understanding of what's our limit without putting everybody over the edge, or certainly looking at grant opportunities, other means of funding. You know, Congress just passed a $2.5 trillion budget, so maybe we can work with some of our state representatives to see if there's money that we can get allocated for our community center, our community-based building. So it's one of those things that I think requires, you know, a lot more discussion and some further exploration, because I think there's the ability to think creatively about how we can pay for everything. I don't think it's I think we need to look a little outside of the box of just a bond, going out to vote for a bond. There's certainly a lot of community, as Linda Tebow said, there's a lot of grants that are out there for senior centers. So if we work with the senior advisory group, we could look at that. But I think one of the things that we're going to be asked about is money. So
I dropped that bomb in the meeting Monday night, right? And it's not that hard. Those are, our finance director can get us that information in a short period of time.
Okay.
And we should expect to get that information real soon. I hope they heard it Monday night. We need that. We need that information. We need to know where we're at. Because ultimately, it's going to benefit the people in North Smithfield, but they're going to have to pay for it. And we have to have an idea of what kind of framework we have for finances. So whoever, if it's you, Jeff, or any one of us, or whoever it is, to have that conversation with the town administrator and say, hey, you know what? Can you get us this information? We asked for it. We need it. There are a lot of grants. I heard what Linda said the other night. A foundation like the Champlin Foundation is tremendous, and what they do for the state of Rhode Island and the money they put out. They want to see shovel-ready projects. They're going to give their money to, we're good to go. And here's our plan, and this is what we got. And by the same token, they want to see a shared expense. They want to see some buy-in from the town as well. That's where the planner comes in. He has the ability to write those grant requests and help push that agenda for us, but we need to get it there. So a big part of that is finding out exactly what the tolerance is, exactly what kind of funding we have available potentially, and putting it on the table. So I'm going to request that we find that information out right away.
So the recommendation in the HRC's role might look something like this. Form a subcommittee to investigate funding opportunities and to work with appropriate town entities to explore financial considerations. Is that broad enough, but also sort of saying the right things?
I think so.
Okay.
So that was my list on revised or revisions to our resolution. So I don't want to be the one that's taking the microphone all the time. So is there any other thoughts or ideas of what everyone would like to see our responsibilities kind of evolve into?
I think it also has to be a progressive thing, and this is the right start. I mean, we don't want to overstep. We don't even know if there's something to be built yet. So as it evolves, then we change our charter. But I think this is a good second step.
Do we want to literally put something in there that allows for our role to sort of evolve as the project moves along?
I don't know if we'll be able to say, let the Halliwell Review Committee evolve as they progress.
Well, not quite in that, broad of term, but,
I don't think the town council's going to run from the opportunity to have volunteers continue to serve. So I don't think we need to try to hint as to what they should do. The implicit in what they said, they're very happy with the work. And I'm sure as long as there's volunteers on this committee, they're going to perpetuate us. So I don't think we need to be that specific.
I just want to say this too. Fortunately, I didn't see Monday night a preponderance of the council or anybody for that matter say, hey, you know what? All I care about is that people pay as few taxes as they can in the town of North Smithfield. I think we've got 5 people on there who recognize that there's value to where we're going with this, and it's going to take a concerted effort to sell that fact that taxpayers are going to have to pay if it goes out to bond. So if I had sat in that audience Monday night and heard 3 of the councilors say, hey, you know what, we're not spending a nickel while I'm sitting on this board, I'd have gotten up and walked out. We didn't hear that. So to determine exactly where we're at financially and to get buy-in from them, I think is a viable process.
We could take from what they give us and say, and then come up with our conceptual ideas. And normally there's a big difference between the budget. Then that's where the creativity comes in, and with all the other grants and opportunities.
And I think also one of the nice things is, at least when I'm working with a client, they'll give us a range of a budget sometimes. Sometimes they'll say the sky's the limit. Let's see what you come back with, and then we'll pull it back from there. So I at the master planning phase, we can really lay it out, get everything that the town residents have requested, put it all in there. And then, as we also said, there's the ability to phase this. So whether it's the recreational aspect that we prioritize, and we do that first because that's the easiest one, that builds the excitement about the property, we do that. Then the next phase is a portion of a building. That then the next phase is the other part of the building. It's once we create that master plan and work with the architect to figure out, okay, what can we build that's within our means, and then we can also look to the future and be like, okay, we'll build this now, but now we know that we have to save X amount of money because we're really going to want to continue moving this forward. So we get the big picture first, then pick away at the priorities and go from there. And with that master planning again, we get that cost estimate. We're able to tell them, okay, in a dialogue with them, okay, in 2024, 2025, this is what our budget's gonna be. What can we get for here? In 2027, it's gonna be this. In 2030, it's gonna be this, you know. So kind of, again, that master plan is gonna be extremely important to kind of dictate how we progress.
It's also important when going for grants, especially DEM grants, they want to see, is your project part of a larger project that, is it just a one and done? If that's fine, that's fine. But if it's a large parcel of land, they want to see, what do you have planned for that? Here's part of it, and then what's your vision for the future? So yeah, I think laying out that master plan will help us tremendously.
Yeah. Chris has been typing away diligently.
Yeah, I mean, so we've got 3 recommendations, and I'm going to sort of kick at least one of them back to you for some wording help. The general thing is recommend that the town keeps the existing HRC and revises the charter to extend the committee's role with the following modifications to its duties. Oversight and execution of the architectural and engineering RFQ and contract. Exploration and viability of wetlands area for recreation purposes in conjunction with the town planner and DEM. Formation of a subcommittee to investigate funding opportunities and to work with appropriate town entities to explore financial considerations.
We had another one to meet with other organizations.
Yeah, so we sort of have these previous recommendations that we talked about, but now they don't fall under the HRC's charter as we're sort of redefining it. What do we do with that?
Okay, so, let's see. So our recommendations to date, or to right now, our first one was for abatement and demolition expeditiously, continue evaluating and investigating further use as a community multi-use structure with additional community involvement. Let's see, what else we got? We have the recommendation to move forward with an RFQ, and we have the recommendation to explore partnerships with community-based organizations with a subcommittee of the HRC. That could probably be, that last one could probably be tied in to.
So we can bring this into the list of modified duties?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is gonna be a long letter to town council.
No, it's just a one-pager.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
But I think, you know, given the ability to form subcommittees to explore various options will be, because, you know, we might find that we need a subcommittee to explore something else. So it could just be as general as asking the town council to have the ability to form subcommittees as we see fit to explore various options to benefit the project.
Yeah, but I think you could argue that it's implied in our task, that if that's what we need to do, we can just go ahead and do it. I mean,
Well,
do we really even need to say the authorization? I mean, they asked us to do something. If we need the subcommittee to do it, then it's implied, I would think.
well, it's, again, one of those, I'm not sure the charter regulations and rules that the solicitor may be aware of. So I would rather make the recommendation and say, ask for permission to do it,
Yep.
as opposed to us do it, and then we find out that we shouldn't be doing it. And then we have to, you know, go back and backtrack a little bit.
Well, it's just a set of precedent, we'll know for the future, that, you know, we have that authority or not.
Right. Because, you know, as it was said tonight, we have no administrative duty. We're an advisory board. We can only make recommendations. So it's one of those things where we can advise the town council that we would like to make a subcommittee, but I don't think we implicitly have the authority to do so. So I rather than forming it and, you know, forming a subcommittee and causing waves, I would much rather just ask for the permission and then we're good.
All right.
Do you want to make your motion?
Okay, I'm going to make a motion that we recommend the town keeps the existing Halliwell Review Committee and revises the charter to extend the committee's role with the following modifications to its duties. Oversight and execution of an architectural and engineering RFQ and contract. Exploration of viability of wetlands area for recreation purposes in conjunction with the town planner and DEM. Investigate funding opportunities and work with appropriate town entities to explore financial considerations. Explore partnerships with community organizations. Explore and evaluate potential community uses of the property. Allow the committee to form subcommittees as needed to complete our tasks.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
The Bobs have seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Are there any other recommendations that we would like to make to town council tonight? Any that anybody feels that we have missed? Because what I'd like to do in January is be a one and done, and we're well on our way. All right. I'm not hearing any other recommendations that we like to. I think we're good. Okay. So our next meetings are January 6th and January 20th. I believe I will get back to everybody on the January 6th meeting because it would seem to be not productive if we don't have our recommendations to town council to move forward. We just say, hello, Happy New Year.
When do they meet?
They will meet, let me look.
Second or the third? Who meets the third?
They will likely not be meeting on the 3rd of January. They'll meet on the 10th of January. So that would be when these recommendations would ultimately be presented.
We should meet after that.
So we should meet on the 20th to review from there, go from there. So everybody gets a nice little break. So I will amend that on our agenda that we will not be meeting on January 6th, but we will be meeting on January 20th. Keep an eye out for the plots of land that are owned by town use. I'll put that request into the planning department tomorrow morning. So other than that, if everyone's feeling good, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Mayo. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second from Mr. Garten. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much. This has been very productive. Have a good night, everyone.
A very Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.